Charlotte is the new home of the SEC Network. The Queen City of the South will now be the portal to the most passionate fans in sports. The traditions and pageantry will echo through these halls and into your homes. From great-grandparents who sat around the radio to youngsters watching on their iPhone. This is a network with a rich foundation to build on. A fan base built on rivalry, but unified when the time is right. A conference that has made Saturdays in the fall a weekly holiday. 40 coaches and 102 players from this conference are honored in the College Football Hall of Fame. And we look forward to telling you all the great stories about these marvelous athletes, all the coaches in this conference, and certainly the most passionate fans in the world. Now for the next few hours, you're going to be in the very capable hands of our hosts for today, Dari Noka and Maria Taylor. Take it away, gang.
And that was 10 years ago today. It all began at the SEC Network, and the very first person you obviously saw was Brent Musburger, and we cannot tell you how happy we are to be looking live at Brent Musburger. I've always wanted to say that to you. I grew up watching you do that. Brent, so great to see you. How are you?
Oh, Paul, what great memories. Thank you so much for having me back. I should call you Mr. SEC, but what a great founding. When you think of those early days, I wondered if they were going to be able to, if the ESPN folks were going to be able to pull it off. Not only did they pull it off, look at how great the SEC Network is today and all the workers behind the scenes that you've got, the production team and the announcers. They've done a fantastic job, not to mention the athletes. And Paul, how about what have we got? I can't keep track. What have we got? 16 teams now with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma. Wow, what a conference this is.
We're only at 16, Brad, but yeah, I was hired a year earlier. I was the first person hired, and then Tebow was hired. And when I heard they were talking about maybe getting you over here, I'm like going, there's no way Brent is ever going to do it. And I'm curious because, I mean, your career speaks for itself, but you not only took on that role, but I've never seen a person embrace it more enjoyably than you did those years you were here.
Paul, the greatest thing about my career is that I was able to do so many things in so many different areas of the country. That's what I love. Now, I lived for a time in Savannah, Georgia, because I wanted to live in the Deep South. I wanted to experience it. I knew how passionate the fans were, and basically I'd been covering the NFL for years. So when ESPN came to us and explained that they were going to go and do an SEC network, I jumped at the opportunity to join it. I thought, if ever there was a conference that has a chance to make it big time, it's the SEC. Not because of the great athletes, great coaches, all of that, great universities. It's because of the fan base down in that part of the country. It was different. I'd covered Michigan, Ohio State for years as a writer, as a radio broadcaster, as a TV guy out of Chicago. I knew what it was like, Michigan, Ohio State every year. And then I went down and discovered Auburn, Alabama. And I said, oh my, this is the real deal.
You sure did. And I mean, so many great memories of watching you. And when we got that night here at the studio, and we were watching you in studio, and that they asked me a couple of minutes into the show, will you go in there and talk to Brent Musburger? I'm like going, I don't believe this. And then just to see you on the road so often, it was just such a thrill. And I hated that. When you ended up leaving, and obviously you've had an amazing. I don't even know what chapter this is of your career, but let's talk a little bit about what you're doing for a second, Brent, because you see, nothing seems to stop you.
Well, they started VSED, my nephew and my brother, and they asked me to join up in the management team and create a gambling network out of Las Vegas. And I had lived in Las Vegas for a while. Matter of fact, I think I've lived everywhere. But anyway, I said, okay, let's go do it. Now, little did I know that the Supreme Court was going to throw out PASPA, I think that was the name of it, and legalize gambling on sports in the United States. So it exploded, Paul, and so did VSIN. Now, DraftKings bought it from us, okay? And then about 10 days ago, they sold it back to us. However, I'm not one of the owners. I leave that up to the younger guys right now. Brent Musburger and Bill 80 are the key guys in that, and I'll be on it from time to time. Still love going down to the Circa Casino in Las Vegas. That's the greatest sports book in the United States. You know, it's like a theater. And hey, Paul, tell some of your friends down there in the Southeast when they come out to Circa in Las Vegas and they want to watch Alabama or Ole Miss or now Oklahoma or Texas, go to Stadium Swim. Stadium Swim. They can swim, and they got these huge screens up there that they can watch. They can watch the games on while they're swimming, and they get a cold beer like you and I did that night of the founding of the SEC network. It's awesome.
And I not to digress, but all the times that while you were doing a game, you didn't care what the bosses said. You would touch on the betting line, but now you can't turn ESPN on without having
Exactly.
it thrown at you.
Exactly. You know, Paul, not that I thought everybody was gambling. They don't. But I always thought that people were interested in the line. I'll give you an anecdote that actually involves CBS, not ESPN. And it involves a championship game in the NFC that we were doing. The NFL Today was on the scene. And then when it went down, I said, Greek, what's the line on next week's Super Bowl? And so he put the line out there, and I got a call. And the head of CBS, he was furious. How could you do that? I have told you, I have warned you. We cannot put the point spreads up on the air like that. I said, I forgot. And next year, Paul, I did it all over again. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, I mean, when you mentioned that, I mean, listen, you can't help but date yourself thinking about these things, but I don't think the audience understands that the NFL Today, which you hosted with Phyllis George and the Greek and Irv Cross, that was really the forerunner of every single thing that we see now.
Yeah, there was a general manager, Paul, by the name of Paul Feinbaum. Actually, and you would have done it before Bobby Wussler, but Bobby Wussler later went to work for Turner down in Atlanta, okay, and became an executive down there. And he's the one, Paul, who said, we can do this pregame show live. Prior to that, Pat Summerall and Jack Whitaker had taped the pregame show on Friday afternoon before they left for whatever games they were covering around the country. And it was Wussler who said, Brent, do you think we can do it live? And I said, why not? Let's go for it. And so we did. And now the guys have taken it. Paul, I got to tell you something. I'm very happy that I don't have to host 2 or 3 hours. I mean, they go on forever now. They're trying to sell those commercials. I mean, they spend so much money on the NFL. Can you believe what the TV rights are now today? It's unbelievable. And I did also know, Paul, Pete Rozelle, I knew really well, when he was a PR guy with the Rams. I was a newspaper man in Chicago. He would come through and he would be telling us about the upcoming game if the Rams were coming in to play the Bears. But I would always run into Pete at the racetrack. So I knew he knows something about gambling. So when we went up to talk to him and asked for permission to put the Greek up, I knew he would nod his head and say yes, and then it's gone from there. But the NFL Today was great. I enjoyed every minute, but I was blessed to have people like Irv Cross and Phyllis, Jimmy the Greek. Later, Will McDonough was also part of the cast up there, and the crew at that was always great. Mike Wallace. I always thought to this day that Mike Wallace might be he would always come in on Sunday afternoon before, and he would always kind of poke around and ask us what we thought. You know what I'm saying?
I bet he was. Brent, I want to, before you go,
Sure.
There's so many memories of not only that night, but a couple weeks later we were in Columbia, South Carolina. You did the first game broadcast on the SEC network, A&M at South Carolina. I mean, there were so many other memories. Just let's go back to that moment in time for you and just your thoughts on those first couple of years.
Well, speaking of South Carolina, I had never, Paul, done a game there. Okay, so I guess I didn't anticipate the kind of experience that we had. I knew about Alabama, and I knew about Auburn, I knew about Georgia, I knew about LSU, and I'd been around those spots a lot. But holy Toledo, I can still remember the caboose out at the side of that stadium. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and the crowd was, there was packed stadium, and they weren't contending for a national championship or anything. It was another one of those SEC teams, but the fan base, and it just goes completely throughout the conference. Now, before we close, I am hopeful that the SEC will join the Big Ten and go to 9 conference games. That's Brent's hope from afar. I love the conference games. And my dog just joined me there. That's a dog. So he's a Georgia fan, you know what I'm saying? And he just barked if you picked it up down everywhere. But anyway, that's what I'm hoping that the SEC does. The more conference games, the better, because I enjoyed every SEC game that I ever did.
Brent, I think we're not. I think we're pretty close to that, and only because of all the things that you've already alluded to with TV that we not go to it sooner. But I think because you are the first voice, and this is the first segment on our first show of the 11th here. I'm gonna toss it back to you, and I think you've done this once or twice before. I'm gonna let Brent Musburger wrap the segment up and send it to the break. You think you can do that?
10 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, this great network was founded. And Mr. SEC, Paul Feinbaum, will take it from here. We'll be right back.